No one helped the Japanese billionaire, until the black waitress greeted him in Japanese. What if kindness spoke in a language you never expected to hear? Hiroshi Tanaka sat alone in the corner booth of Murphy's Diner, his expensive suit looking out of place among the worn vinyl seats and chipped coffee cups. For 3 weeks, he'd been coming to the same spot every morning, ordering the same black coffee, leaving the same generous tip. Not once had anyone acknowledged him beyond the bare minimum required for service. The other customers whispered and stared, some with curiosity, others with thinly veiled suspicion. He understood more English than he let on, catching fragments of conversations about that foreign businessman, and wondering why someone like him would choose a place like Murphy's. His phone buzzed constantly with urgent messages from Tokyo, but Hiroshi ignored them all. He'd lost something precious here in this small American town, and until he found it, nowhere else mattered. Where are you watching from tonight? Drop your city in the comments, because this story is about to change everything you think about strangers. Hiroshi's morning ritual had become sacred to him, though he couldn't explain why to the executives who called him daily. Back in Japan, he commanded boardrooms and made decisions that affected thousands of employees across his technology empire. But here in Millfield, Ohio, he was just another customer most people seemed eager to ignore. The diner buzzed with its usual crowd, factory workers grabbing breakfast before their shifts, elderly couples sharing quiet conversations over pancakes, truck drivers fueling up for long hauls. Everyone belonged, except him. 3 weeks ago, his daughter Yuki had been driving through this very town when her car broke down. She'd called him, scared and alone, speaking rapid Japanese about the kindness of strangers who helped her find shelter for the night. "The people here have such warm hearts, Papa," she'd said. "Especially one lady who didn't speak any Japanese, but somehow made me feel safe." 2 days later, Yuki died in a car accident just 50 miles from Millfield. Hiroshi had flown from Tokyo to Ohio, but instead of handling the arrangements and flying home, he checked into the local inn and started coming to Murphy's Diner every morning, searching for something he couldn't name. The waitresses rotated shifts, but none paid him much attention beyond taking his order. There was Patricia, a grandmother with kind eyes who moved slowly but smiled at everyone. Then there was Janet, efficient and professional, but clearly uncomfortable with customers who didn't look like her neighbors. The morning crowd had its rhythm, and Hiroshi sat outside of it, nursing his coffee and watching life happen around him. He tried speaking English to a few patrons, but conversations died quickly, leaving him feeling more isolated than ever. His phone rang again. "Tanaka-san, the board meeting cannot wait another week," his assistant pleaded from thousands of miles away. "The merger requires your signature, your presence." Hiroshi looked around the diner at the peeling paint and the smell of bacon grease, and wondered what his daughter had seen here that he was missing. The factory workers joked loudly at the counter, their voices carrying the easy familiarity of people who'd known each other for decades. An elderly man read his newspaper while his wife worked a crossword puzzle, occasionally asking him for help with a clue. This was the America Yuki had loved, the kindness she'd experienced in her final days. But Hiroshi remained on the outside, his expensive clothes and foreign features marking him as different in a town where different often meant unwelcome. He'd grown up poor in post-war Japan, building his fortune from nothing. But money couldn't buy him what he desperately needed now. He needed to understand what his daughter had felt in this place, needed to connect with the warmth she described. The coffee grew cold in his hands as he watched the morning shift change. A new waitress emerged from the kitchen, her dark skin contrasting with the crisp white uniform, her movements purposeful but unhurried. She glanced his way briefly, and something in her expression seemed different from the others. Hiroshi felt a strange flutter of hope, though he couldn't say why. Kesha Washington had worked at Murphy's Diner for 6 years, ever since moving to Millfield to care for her aging grandmother. She noticed the Japanese businessman from her first day back after taking time off for her grandmother's funeral. Something about his posture spoke to her, the way he sat so carefully straight, hands folded precisely around his coffee cup, eyes scanning the room with a mixture of hope and resignation that she recognized all too well. Growing up in Detroit, Kesha had been the only black student in her advanced Japanese classes. While other kids thought she was crazy for choosing such a useless language, she'd fallen in love with the precision and respect embedded in every phrase. Her teacher, Mrs. Yamamoto, had become like a second mother to her, teaching her not just vocabulary and grammar, but the cultural nuances that made Japanese more than just words. Language is a bridge, Mrs. Yamamoto had always said. It connects hearts, not just minds. Now, watching this man sit alone morning after morning, Kesha felt that lesson calling to her. She'd overheard enough whispered conversations to know people were uncomfortable with his presence, unsure what to make of someone so clearly wealthy choosing their humble diner. Some wondered if he was checking up on the town for some corporate takeover. Others simply didn't trust what they didn't understand. The other waitresses served him politely but distantly, treating him like a puzzle they didn't care to solve. During her break, Kesha had Googled his name after seeing it on the credit card receipt. Hiroshi Tanaka, CEO of Tanaka Technologies, worth more than most small countries. But the search results also revealed something heartbreaking: his daughter's recent death in a car accident right here in Ohio. Suddenly, his daily presence at the diner made perfect sense. He wasn't here for business or curiosity. He was here for the same reason she'd spent months sitting in her grandmother's empty house after the funeral, trying to feel close to someone she'd lost. This morning felt different somehow. Kesha watched him check his phone repeatedly, saw the tension in his shoulders as he ignored call after call. His coffee sat untouched, growing cold while he stared out the window at the parking lot where his daughter might have stood just weeks ago. Patricia was handling his section, but she was overwhelmed with the breakfast rush, barely managing to keep up with the truckers' orders and the factory workers' usual banter. Without really deciding, Kesha found herself walking over to his table. Her heart hammered as she approached, not from fear, but from the weight of what she was about to attempt. She'd practiced Japanese conversations in her head for years, but this felt different, more important than any classroom exercise. As she reached his booth, she took a breath and let the words she'd learned so long ago carry the respect and compassion she felt. Ohayou gozaimasu. Adarashii kohi wa ikaga desu ka? The effect was immediate and startling. Hiroshi's head snapped up, his eyes wide with something between shock and desperate relief. For a moment, he seemed unable to speak, just staring at this young woman who had just asked if he'd like fresh coffee, in perfect, respectful Japanese. If this moment touched your heart already, give the video a thumbs up right now, because you haven't seen anything yet. Hi, arigato gozaimasu, Hiroshi whispered, his voice catching on the simple words of gratitude. He'd heard his native language spoken by non-Japanese people before, usually in stilted textbook phrases that showed effort but little understanding. But Kesha's Japanese carried something deeper, a respect and warmth that made his chest tighten with unexpected emotion. Kesha returned moments later with a fresh pot of coffee. The other customers now openly staring at their exchange. She poured carefully, then surprised him again by sitting down across from him without invitation. Musume-sen no koto da, Hanto and I mashiwake gozaimasen. Okayami mashigemasu. Your daughter. I'm very sorry for your loss. The words hit Hiroshi like a physical blow. No one in this town had mentioned Yuki. Not the police, not the funeral director, not the desk clerk at the inn. But this waitress, this stranger, had somehow known and cared enough to offer condolences in his own language. How do you? He began in English, then switched back to Japanese, the language feeling safer somehow. How do you know about my daughter? I lost my grandmother recently. Kesha replied, staying in Japanese but adding English words when her vocabulary fell short. I recognized the look of someone trying to find pieces of someone they love. Your daughter was here. Hiroshi nodded, pulling out his phone to show her a picture of Yuki, a young woman with her father's serious eyes but a radiant smile that could light up any room. She called me from this town, he said. Said the people here were kind to her when her car broke down. She was happy here for those 2 days. Kesha studied the photo, then looked around the diner with new eyes. Mrs. Patterson at the gas station mentioned a young Japanese lady a few weeks back. Said she was sweet as pie, tried to help in the kitchen even though they couldn't really talk to each other. That was your daughter? Yes. The word came out as barely a whisper. She said someone here made her feel safe. I came to find, to understand, to feel close to her. Kesha finished gently. I understand. After my grandmother passed, I kept coming to church even though I'd stopped believing, just because she felt present there. Around them, the diner had grown quieter. Patricia was lingering nearby, pretending to wipe down tables but clearly listening. Even Jake, the gruff cook, had poked his head out of the kitchen window. The factory workers at the counter had stopped their usual joking to watch this unexpected conversation unfold. Hiroshi felt something crack open in his chest. 3 weeks of carefully controlled grief threatening to spill over. In boardrooms across 3 continents he was known for his composure, his ability to make rational decisions under pressure. But sitting across from this young woman who spoke his language and understood his pain, he felt 17 again, afraid, uncertain, and desperately alone. I don't know how to say goodbye to her, he admitted, the words coming out in a mixture of Japanese and broken English. I don't know how to leave this place. Kesha reached across the table and gently touched his hand, a gesture that would have been unthinkable in the formal business world he knew, but felt perfectly natural here. You don't have to say goodbye, she said softly in Japanese. You carry her with you always. But maybe you can say hello to the people who cared for her. She stood up and walked to the counter, addressing the room in clear English. Everyone, I'd like you to meet Mr. Tanaka. 3 weeks ago, his daughter Yuki was stranded here when her car broke down. She called him from this very diner, told him how kind and welcoming all of you were to her. 2 days later, she died in an accident on the highway. He's been coming here every morning since, trying to understand what she felt here, trying to feel close to her. The room fell completely silent except for the sizzle of bacon on the grill. Patricia set down her coffee pot and walked over to Hiroshi's table. Honey, she said, her voice thick with emotion. You're talking about that sweet girl with the bright smile? She helped me carry plates when I was running behind. Couldn't understand a word I said, but just jumped right in like family. Jake wiped his hands on his apron and came out from behind the grill for the first time anyone could remember. That little lady tried to teach me how to fold napkins the fancy way. Kept pointing at the corners and saying origami, origami until I got it right. His gruff voice cracked slightly. Real sweetheart. One by one, the other customers began sharing their memories. The truck driver at the end of the counter remembered how Yuki had drawn pictures of his children when he'd shown her wallet photos. The elderly couple recalled how she'd helped the woman with her crossword puzzle, somehow communicating the answers through gestures and drawings. Even the factory workers, tough men who rarely spoke to outsiders, admitted they'd been charmed by her attempts to learn their names in English. She drew us a picture, one of them said, pulling out his wallet. Look here. She drew all of us standing together, wrote thank you in English and something in Japanese underneath. He handed the worn paper to Hiroshi. Hiroshi looked at his daughter's careful handwriting. In Japanese, she'd written, These people have hearts like yours, Papa. They show love through action, not words. His hands trembled as he read her observation about these strangers who'd become her temporary family. She saw who you really are, Hiroshi said to the room, switching between Japanese and English as Kesha quietly translated. In Tokyo, in my world, kindness is complicated. But she found here what I've spent my whole life building companies to create: community, family. The diner erupted in movement as people began gathering around Hiroshi's table, sharing more stories, showing pictures, and offering the connection he'd been desperately seeking. Patricia brought him fresh coffee without being asked. Jake insisted he try the apple pie Yuki had loved. The elderly woman asked him to help with her crossword, just as Yuki had done. 3 months later, Hiroshi stood in the completely renovated Murphy's Diner, watching Kesha train the new staff on the customer service standards that would make the restaurant worthy of the Tanaka name, not because he bought it as a business investment, but because this community deserved a gathering place as beautiful as the hearts of the people who called it home. The worn vinyl booths had been replaced with comfortable seating, the kitchen updated with modern equipment, and the walls now displayed dozens of photos capturing the daily life and laughter of Millfield's residents. Tanaka-san, called Patricia, who now served as the diner's community coordinator, a role Hiroshi had created specifically for her. The mayor's here with the city council. They're ready for your presentation about the scholarship program. The Yuki Tanaka Memorial Scholarship would send one local student each year to study in Japan, while a sister program would bring Japanese students to Millfield. Cultural exchange, Hiroshi had learned, happened not in boardrooms, but around dinner tables, not through corporate programs, but through shared stories over coffee. Kesha approached carrying a leather folder. The final applications came in today. We have 37 students applying for the first scholarship. She switched to Japanese, a language she now spoke daily as she helped coordinate the cultural programs. Your daughter would be proud of what her kindness inspired. Hiroshi nodded, accepting the folder. Through the window he could see the small garden the town had planted in Yuki's memory, where cherry blossom trees would bloom each spring as a reminder that beauty could grow from loss. His phone buzzed with messages from Tokyo, but they no longer felt urgent. His company ran efficiently under his capable lieutenants, and his monthly trips back to Japan felt more like visits than returns home. Mr. Tanaka? It was Jimmy, one of the factory workers, approaching hesitantly. My daughter Jenny, she's been studying Japanese really hard since you started the language classes at the school. She wanted to say something to you. A shy 10-year-old stepped forward, bowed formally, and spoke in careful Japanese. Thank you for making our town more beautiful. Hiroshi knelt down to her level, remembering how Yuki had always insisted he do the same when speaking to children. No, he replied in English, wanting everyone to understand. Thank you for showing me that home isn't where you come from. Home is where people remember your name, where they save your favorite pie, where they care about your stories. He looked around the bustling diner, at Patricia refilling coffee cups, at Jake teaching a customer how to fold napkins the origami way, at Kesha switching effortlessly between languages as she welcomed new visitors. My daughter found her way home here, he continued, his voice steady with peace rather than grief. And now, so have I. As the lunch rush began, Hiroshi took his usual seat at the corner booth, not as an outsider, but as family. The walls around him hummed with conversations in English, Spanish, and increasingly Japanese, as the community embraced the cultural richness that Yuki's memory had inspired. He opened the scholarship applications, ready to help another young person discover that the world was smaller, and kinder, than they'd ever imagined. Because sometimes, the most beautiful families are the ones we never expected to find. If this story moved you, hit that like button, share your own story of finding family in unexpected places in the comments, and subscribe for more heartwarming journeys like this one. Thank you for watching, and remember, home isn't a place. It's the people who choose to love you.